Hi, guys. Welcome to the Danny Bossa podcast, where we explore the subjects of health, fitness, nutrition, hormone replacement therapy, peptides, psychology, and everything else to help you optimize your body and mind. Now, my guest today is a Czech Institute holistic lifestyle coach with a diploma in science who's done extensive independent research in the fields of things like neuropsychology, genetics, epigenetics, endocrinology, movement, as well as nutrition. And he's also got a vast knowledge in the areas of things like hormone replacement therapy, performance and recovery, autoimmune conditions, mood disorders, brain injury recovery, stress management, longevity, biohacking, and much more. At a young age of only 29 years old, most people who know him kind of refer to him as being like an old soul. Now, I'm honored to call this man a friend and to have him on as my very first guest on this channel. A warm and appreciative welcome to my dear friend, Dave Lee. So Dave, I'd love for you to explain to the viewers about your beginnings and like the things that transpired that led you down the path to who you become today.
Yeah, basically, I spent a long time doing music. I spent a long time working in marketing as well, which the music was something that was a big thing for me. And like a lot of the young musicians coming up, like you've always kind of got to have your day job. You've always got to have your plan B, or you've got to have that thing that's making you money while you're doing music. And when I left music, I kind of realized that I really wasn't fulfilled by my plan B. And it became very clear to me because I was doing quite well in what I was doing. I was doing digital marketing. I had a good clientele. I had a nice office. Like I was very good at what I did as well, but I just really didn't enjoy it. And there was a conversation I was having one night with a friend who was a mentor as well. Very good mentor, actually. He taught me a lot in marketing. And we had this conversation one night, and he was basically expressing that he got as much joy and pleasure from doing the work he did in marketing that I got when I was on stage performing with music. And I sat there and I said, well, that's convenient because what you do makes you a shit ton of money and that makes you happy. And that's a very nice combination. But it made me realize that I really wasn't fulfilled in the work I was doing. And then side note, coincidentally, I ended up having a brain injury about 2 to 3 weeks later, which completely wiped me out from being able to work in that role. And that led me down the path of eventually teaching myself how to cure the brain injury, going through a very long, arduous rehabilitation process where I kind of had to rebuild myself from the ground up. But a big factor of that was testosterone replacement therapy, because I wouldn't have been able to get through rehab without it psychologically, but physiologically, it was also what my body needed to heal. So as I went through university and I kept getting told by doctors, you can't heal a nerve in your brain. You can't fix this, that you're never going to recover. You're never going to walk properly again. And the big thing that I learned about that, and the thing that kind of rings true a lot when I'm working with a lot of guys and hearing their experiences with doctors or other practitioners, is if someone tells you something can't be done, it doesn't mean it can't be done. It means they don't know how to do it. And I think that's the biggest factor why guys come to me, is the doctors will tell them, I didn't even mean to segue that, by the way, but that kind of nailed that. But doctors will tell them, like, you can't fix this, or you can't do this, or this can't be done. And they end up coming to me because I am usually the last resort. I'm usually the wit's end. I usually see people when they've seen, every doctor, or they've spent, 5 or 6 grand on consultations with other practitioners, and they've got 100 different tests in all different departments, and no one's been able to tell them why they're not feeling good. And I think that's the biggest reason that people come to me, is that they're not feeling okay. They know that something's wrong. Mm-hmm. And they go to all these doctors and practitioners and they're told they're fine. And they're intuitive enough with themselves that they know that they're not. And that's when they usually come to see me.
Yeah, I can attest that this is, kind of been my experience as well regarding the like the types of people who I've personally sent your way. And it's like mostly men who, they've seen multiple doctors, tried everything, they just weren't really getting ahead. And, many of them ask me for a good doctor to refer, but it's like once I find out what their issues are, I always, crack a little bit of a smile and say, you don't need a doctor. What you need is Dave. And, some people always reply like, who the hell is Dave? But after a few weeks, I always get that, that email back, and they're always just blown away by what you've been able to figure out and accomplish in such a short time. And frankly, it's astonishing that most physicians out there, they seem to know how to prescribe meds and treat a particular disease, but they don't really seem to know how to actually improve health. So give me a little bit of the background on the types of, the things you work on to provide some context as well as an idea of the types of people who reach out to you and why.
Yeah, so I kind of work with a couple of other things outside of TRT, which often come up together, like stuff like autoimmune conditions, and also, mental health issues, which are, a lot of the time, all three of those things occur together, particularly mental health issues and TRT. So if I had to say the main reason why people come to me, other than the fact, other than the umbrella term, which is that they're basically up against a wall and they're out of options, it's usually mental health issues is why they're seeking help, or sexual health issues, but they go hand in hand. So usually people are coming to me because they're suffering with mental health problems, usually, what people would label as depression or anxiety, or I would call chronic stress or learned fear. And they come to me because they're struggling with the world. They usually understand that antidepressants are not the right solution, either because they don't want to take them, or they've taken them and it hasn't worked, or someone they know took them and it didn't work out, which is really good. They've kind of realized that psychiatric drugs are not the solution for the fact they're not doing well. And then the other group of guys that come to me, which is really cool, is guys who need more of like the mentoring and coaching with getting their TRT right. And then also the other side of that, which is, well, I've got my hormones right, like I'm injecting the right amount of whatever, and my blood work looks like X and Y, but then they've got to be in this situation, which is something that I worked with a lot in my head injury, which is that I had this idea, like when I completed rehab, so I had very bad vertigo, and I thought that when I got my balance back, when the vertigo went away, I would go back to being the person I was before the injury. And then when I got rid of the vertigo, I realized that I was just very fucking traumatized and scared, and I was not the person I used to be. And I think a lot of guys who start TRT, they get their testosterone right, they get everything right on paper, but they know that they're not where they need to be in terms of like their frame or their psychology, or what they're doing in the world. And they generally need someone to come in and look at their situation. And usually they need it to be a dude and go, this is where you're being a little bitch. Usually they need someone to kick them up the ass and tell them what other people would tell them is okay is not okay. And they have to start taking responsibility for their work. And so a lot of guys come to me in terms of being like, I know that something's off in terms of what I'm doing is not right. And I think it's more to do with my psychology or what I'm doing in the world. And a lot of the time it is.
Yeah, I completely agree with you there. It seems to me that men are, in general, they're getting softer with every passing generation. Like I look at my dad's generation and even my grandfather's generation compared to where I'm at, and there's this massive difference. And then I compare to where I'm at, let's say, with what my kids are going through. And it's got me worried. Like you can tell their bodies are being bombarded by an environment just absolutely loaded with pollution and hormones and processed foods and high sugar foods and drinks and all the contaminants and the phthalates found in so many of the products we buy without even really knowing it. And then you add in factors like social media, how it causes like such a high degree of stressing people, photos of people in their best moments and wondering why, their lives aren't as exciting. And it's like any little thing you do and the whole world can turn on you in a second because everyone just finds out. So there's less and less real relationships in the real world and such a high obligation to perform due to so much competition. And everything is getting more and more expensive and salaries are not, adjusting in accordance. So the stress in itself that it causes, it wreaks havoc with their bodies and minds. And many of them are simply like not equipped to deal with it, nor have any clue how to fix it, even if they wanted to. So what would you consider to be like the biggest factor that, is causing men to have all these issues today?
The biggest factor, which you touched on, is stress. And I think stress can be psychological and physiological, because when we look at what stress is stress is the opposite of scarcity, in my opinion. So it's not having enough X to do Y. So it's not being smart enough to answer a question, not having enough money to pay your bills, or not being fit enough to do what you need to do, or for your body not being able to metabolize the energy it needs to actually do what you need to do in the world. So stress is definitely the biggest one, and it comes up in all shapes and forms. Like I'd say if you're eating a shitty diet, you're going to be stressing out the body, and that would be stress as well. But psychological stress is a huge one. And I think that it is compounded by the fact that a lot of these guys are highly stressed, but they're also purposeless. There's a lot of guys who are going through the world, they're putting one foot in front of the other, they're going through the motions, they're doing the things that they, were taught to do or told to do or indoctrinated to do by, whatever the societal standards are. but they're in their late 20s, early 30s, early 40s, and they don't really have that thing that gets them out of bed, other than the fact that that's otherwise they'll get fired from their job. Like, so I think if you're under a lot of stress and you don't have that purpose to actually push through and create meaning to the effort that you're putting in, then you're going to have a very depressing life. And this doesn't surprise me when a lot of guys come to me and they say I'm depressed, and they tell me what they do, and I'd say, well, yeah, I'd be depressed if I was in that situation too. I think that's completely normal, and I think that's okay. But what's not okay is not doing something about it and changing it. And I think that taking a pill when you're living a depressive life to make you not depressed, I mean, that doesn't make any sense. To me, that's like punching yourself in the face every morning and taking a painkiller. And now people are so docile, and they're wondering what's missing from their life. They're like, what is this thing that I'm not having? For men with high testosterone, it's physicality. It is being able to get into that space, being able to get into that zone, and building resilience in spaces that people are uncomfortable. And that way, when you come back to day-to-day life, it's all a fucking piece of cake, because you've now got real problems. Like if you're in a boxing ring and you're, defending yourself, you're putting your guard up, you're learning your steps, you may be copping a few punches, you're doing that a few nights a week. Everything else is easy, because all of a sudden now you're not having to worry about getting punched in the face. Everything by comparison is not a real problem anymore, because you're not in physical danger. Yeah. And what you realize is you just need to put one foot in front of the other, move forward, execute, and get shit done, and stop making excuses.
Yeah, I can almost always pick up on the ones who seem to be like just stuck in a rut and either can't figure out a way out, or even can't even find the motivation to find a way to get out. But it's incredible like how much of an impact it has when you find a way to start doing things, even if it's only to make like some small but notable accomplishments. Like I remember before I started testosterone replacement therapy, I just didn't even want to get out of bed most days, and just couldn't find like the motivation or the drive to do much of anything. But then once I started it, I realized I couldn't just simply take some testosterone and all my life's issues would just vanish. So I made a decision really to get, start getting shit done, like you just said. And what was incredible was that after a few small things done, that sense of accomplishment drives you to go, and do more and more and set bigger and higher goals. And it's amazing what a bit of effort can do, because it just gets to the point that you're consistently getting shit done and moving forward. And once you're constantly moving forward, it becomes like almost uncomfortable to stop. Like, I mean, just something like this channel I just started, like you would have asked me this, a couple of years ago if I would ever do something like this, and I'd think you were nuts. But now it's just like kind of an afterthought, really. It's like I'll come up with an idea, and I just don't have that like little weak ass voice in the back of my head telling me I can't do something. It's just gone at this point. Like it's now just a matter of me kind of deciding whether or not I think something has value to do. And once the decision is made, I mean, I just do it. But this was a major bit of work for me over the past several years. And I used to be very much like the type of guys you're describing. And lately I find myself, asking myself, why was I even so afraid to do these things to begin with? And what was the worst that could have happened? Like the biggest thing for me was simply putting myself in an uncomfortable situation, or even agreeing to do things that I'd simply like agree to do and then just figure it out later. And now I find myself being able to get these things accomplished that I would have never been able to do before.
What you were talking about, right? Like you were talking about momentum, like moving forward. And I think momentum is the cure to depression, because a lot of the time when you're anxious and afraid, you get that, paralysis, you kind of, stop doing things. And then I believe that causes depression, because then you're feeling guilty, because you're like, I should be doing all these things. And then you're stuck, and then you're not moving forward, and then you're not proud of yourself, you're ashamed. And I think that internal shame and then fear, and it just feeds into each other as a vicious cycle. And sometimes it's exactly what you said in terms of being like, what is there to be afraid of? Like, I remember, so I was a drummer for, all growing up. In my first few bands, I was a drummer. And when you're a drummer on stage, you can't actually see past the front of the stage because of the lights. So you've got lights coming at you. So you generally can't see past the first row of people. So you're in your own world. Like you've got a click track going, like you're just belting it. Like as a drummer, you can have the best show with no one in the crowd. But when you're a singer and you're right up front, you're not hiding behind a guitar, you're feeding so much off the crowd. Like you're up here, they're there, and it is vulnerable as fuck. And I remember swapping from drums, going to vocals. I just come back from recording this album. The first show I did as a singer was televised. And it was this big launch of a new channel in Australia called like Go. I don't know if we still have it, but I remember thinking I was going to get up there and nail it, and then getting up there, and I had my back to the crowd the whole time. And I was very aware I would gravitate back towards the drum kit, like on stage, because that was subconsciously my comfort zone. But the biggest thing for me, like, being a singer, like if you're on stage and like you're playing between songs and like the guitarist snaps a string or something, you've kind of got to talk to the crowd to kind of keep that thing flowing. And that is so difficult because you're up there, you're vulnerable, you're looking out and you can see the faces of all these people, maybe there's a girl you like, maybe there's your friends from school, maybe your parents back there. Your entire community of peers are up there and you're up there spotlight singing, fucking terrifying. But what I went from was being like, and I had the worst stage presence of any band or singer that I knew of because it was so difficult and so uncomfortable and so vulnerable. But then I just did it for like 8 years straight and I got really fucking good at it because the amount of times we'd be up on stage, our guitarist would snap like 3 strings in a show, samples would cut out. I just have to talk and banter with the crowd. But I didn't get good at it until I fucking sucked at it, maybe like 50 times. Like it took so much just repetition and being like, okay, I haven't done this before. I'm uncomfortable. This sucks. I'm vulnerable, but I have to keep doing it. I'm just going to keep getting better and better and better and better and better. But that's the problem is most guys won't get past that first few. They'll have a panic attack or they'll have they'll put a big wall up. They'll throw their hands up and go, I can't do that anymore. But at the end of the day, like what is the worst possible scenario? What is the consequence of that? Nothing's bad. I'm not going to die. No one's going to die. I'm not in physical danger. And it's just my ego that's in danger. But when you kind of get through that and go, okay, this is something that I can just do and overcome. But a lot of guys, they don't have a man there, which would have, when they're younger is their father, to just go, keep fucking pushing, do it again, do it again, do it again. Because at the moment we concentrate on how people feel. Oh, that made me feel anxious. That made me feel this, made me feel this. What people need is a guy to come in and go, I don't give a fuck how you feel. No one cares how you feel. And that's reality. You've just got to go fucking do it. Or you can go sit home and be depressed and do nothing. Like you kind of have to make a choice. And that's the biggest lesson I say to a lot of guys. Like I do very strongly care about all my clients. And that's one of the reasons why, I've done well in terms of being where I am. But a lot of the time when they're telling me how they're feeling, I'll just straight up tell them I don't care because it doesn't change what they need to do. And a lot of the time there's a lot of comfort for them in that and go, I'm like, if I don't care, why should you care how you feel? Like if you wake up depressed and anxious and sad, that sucks. I'm sorry, but still go to the fucking gym anyway. Like it doesn't matter. Just go fucking train. And building that mentality into guys, kind of shifting them away from focusing on how they're feeling to going, I'm actually going to push how I feel away. That's mindfulness. That is what we teach through mindfulness and meditation. And these are these traits that these guys need to be hearing because they're not hearing it anywhere else.
Yeah, beautifully said, Dave. I mean, it's these simple concepts really that sometimes we just need to be reminded of and hear them from time to time and make us say, yeah, I do that and I shouldn't be doing that. Or, this is holding me back, or I need to do, X, Y, Z instead because it's going to provide more value to my life and likely those around me. So, guys, you can find Dave's information below this video, and please stay tuned for my part 2 with my interview with him. Also, if you've enjoyed this video, give us a like and subscribe. Don't forget to hit that notification button so you don't miss out, and I hope to see you soon.